Tell us about the essence of his testimony. This is a man who had a massive budget that he controlled in government as head of GCIS, and I suppose that's really where he wants to shed some light into how the Guptas then feature into the story.
That's right, Tulas. Themba Maseko saying that his department, his specific department, which is GCIS, that department on an annual basis would get somewhere around 400 to 500 million rand as an operational budget. Then there was the 600 million rand that then becomes the source of public discussion because that is the amount that RJ Gupta would have spoken to him about, and according to Masego, this particular budget related to individual government departments that would then be helped with the assistance of GCIS in order to communicate a government message. And it would appear that this was the amount that Mr. RJ Gupta would have been interested in, and this is the amount, this is the issue that RJ Gupta would have wanted to discuss with Mr. Masego face to face. And of course, he says after a lot of back and forth during that phone call that he received that day about a meeting face to face, he eventually relented and agreed to meet with RJ Gupta at their Saxon World Gupta compound. And so that is the sum total to us about the issue of the budget, because that's what this whole story is about. It's about that advertising money that the Guptas wanted in order to finance, or I guess to fund, the media entity that they wanted to establish, both a print and electronic media, which eventually you and I would know that that would have been the New Age newspaper, that is the print element, and of course ANN7, which is the electronic version.
So just like any, good series, Oli, the way this ended, it was almost ended like a cliffhanger. It left us wanting more, because we were at the point where he's now about to tell us about getting to Saxon World and having this meeting with the Guptas, the RJ Gupta in particular. But in a sense, though, this particular series for you in particular, Oli, there's a sense that you've seen this movie before, because in the past, Themba Maseko has described the events leading up to him being at Saxon World, particularly the role of the former president.
Indeed, Tulas, because where it ended, the commission ended, was exactly how I described it inside there among some of the colleagues, that it's a cliffhanger, because we're at a point where he is now leaving and he's at the parking lot, but now the commission, the man who's leading him in this evidence, Vytjie Mentor, also of course intervening, was the chairperson of the commission, the Judge Zondo, are asking about why did he agree to go and meet at the Gupta compound. Is it normal practice that when someone wants assistance from government, that they would go to that person's meeting venue of choice, as opposed to those people coming to government offices? And so Masego was explaining that the whole issue of the meeting venue really did not mean much to him at the time, because I guess he was stuck in this conversation, and I guess he wanted, he says, to find out what this really was about. And of course, as you say, because I've seen this movie before, you will know that just as he goes to his car, Mr. Masego says he then receives this phone call from none other than former President Jacob Zuma himself, who then requests and speaks to him in isiZulu saying, please, will you help these Gupta brothers? And therefore, this is what then angers Mr. Masego, who I guess eventually does go and meet the Guptas, but he is extremely unhappy at this point, because it becomes clear to him that they were applying pressure, not just subtle pressure, but pressure that would come from the highest office in the land. Just to go back a little bit to us as well, the issue that we started on, or the clip that you played around the whole Hawks issue, Advocate Malega is saying that at some point during the commission, they actually are going to somewhat build a case around what he says was a behavioral pattern with the Hawks, around the treatment of Themba Maseko, the treatment of Mcebisi Jonas, and indeed the treatment and conduct around Vytjie Mentor. He says that they appear to be piecing together a case of the behavioral pattern of the Hawks, especially in relation to these three people that I've mentioned.
Yeah, and I suppose we'll hear more about that, because in the context, Xoli, the role of the Hawks and allegations against certain members of the Hawks came up even in the testimony of Themba Jonas, and how he alleges that actually there was a point at which there was a statement prepared that he was asked to then sign, and he says he refused flatly to sign, and even allegations that there was an attempt to kill off the case that Themba Jonas says he had laid. But let's rewind, Xoli. Before Themba Maseko, there was a Vytjie Mentor on the stand. Yesterday, towards the end, it became a difficult day for Vytjie Mentor, as she broke down and basically was talking about her safety concerns and concerns around her accommodation at the hotel where she's been staying. What was today about? Was it about tying up some loose ends from her testimony?
Today was really about wrapping up the whole issue of the statements, the multiple statements to us, because there is the original statement, which says would have been drafted some 2 years back in Durbanville, at a Durbanville police station in Cape Town, and then somewhere along the line that statement gets tempered with, and then she starts speaking about a corrupted version which would have been presented to him by a advocate Mdolo, who appears to be also an officer within the Hawks. And then there's also another version to us which would have been sent to her and signed at some SARS office. So it had to do with that particular statement and sort of tying up loose ends in as far as that particular statement was concerned. But eventually things came to an end, and even though there are some loopholes in her testimony to us, for example, she speaks about having spoken about the offer of a ministerial post to the then Secretary General of the ANC, Gwede Mantashe, alongside his deputy Jesse Duarte in 2010, and that's where some of the discrepancies come in, because Jesse Duarte, we all know that was only elected Deputy Secretary General for the first time in 2012 during the Mangaung ANC conference, and Jesse has already said in the media that she has no recollection of speaking to Vytjie about the Guptas. The only thing she would have spoken to her about was her injuring her leg in Parliament. In as far as Mr. Mantashe is concerned, I had a conversation with him today, which I tweeted, where he says that he definitely confirms that he did speak to Vytjie Mentor in 2012, but the meeting would have been about her trip to China, and the fact that that trip would have been paid for by Transnet, and this had nothing to do with the Guptas apparently offering her an offer of a ministerial post. And Mantashe going further to say that if he is called upon, he will come to the commission and actually give his version of events. But in as far as Ms. Mentor is concerned, Mr. Mantashe confirming that he actually is suing her for what he says are manufactured facts around him owning farms in certain areas of the country and a certain contract with Eskom. So it does appear that there is going to be some back and forth in as far as some version of her statements are concerned. Remember also that there is the Chief of Staff in former President Jacob Zuma's office, Lakela Kaunda, who's also raised an issue about her having been accused by Vytjie Mentor of actually being the person who would have arranged for a meeting between her and the Gupta brother that would have eventually met with her at Saxon World.
So how was Vytjie Mentor's demeanor though today, Xoli? And also talk to the issue around the possibility of cross-examination, because I imagine from what you are saying, from her testimony, many people would probably be lining up to say, you know, we would really be keen to be given the opportunity to speak to her and actually challenge her on some of her facts.
Indeed, Tulasa, in fact, we had the opportunity to speak with Vytjie Mentor after her testimony, and my colleague Aaron Bates actually did ask her about some of the versions of her testimony which could possibly come to be challenged when the issue of cross-examination comes along. And I'm not sure if we are ready with that soundbite of Vytjie Mentor, but if it is ready, perhaps let's try and listen back to it in as far as the issues around the meeting with Mantashe at Luthuli House and Jesse Duarte.
Please don't take me to the contents of what's happening inside the commission. I am not going to discuss that. I just want to discuss the overall framework of the commission and to encourage South Africans to come forward with evidence and to tell them that they will be protected. So I'm not going to discuss anything of what I said, who says what, insofar as matters of the commission are concerned. And I think we are done, you and I.
So she flatly refuses to get into details then and to be drawn on some of the contents of what she said inside the commission. And I suppose we could say understandably so, because, you know, there's already a commission process that is underway. Very quickly then, Xoli, what happens tomorrow? You've seen this movie before, as we were saying. What do we expect from Themba Maseko first thing tomorrow morning, 9:30? Where does it take us?
Well, Themba Maseko, I think when he then resumes his testimony at about 9:30 tomorrow, Tulas, he is certainly going to get into, therefore, the phone call, I would imagine, that he receives before he actually goes to the Gupta compound. But Tulas, just very quickly, I know we're wrapping up, but someone who's actually presented himself here right next to me who was attending this commission is the head of the presidency in the ANC, and that's Zizi Godwa, who joins me now. Mr. Godwa, thank you very much for your time. Very, very quickly, we are out of time. I am stealing a bit of Tulas's time. Talk to me about what your impressions are so far in relation to the evidence that has been given here by people like Mcebisi Jonas, Vytjie Mentor, and now Themba Maseko, in particular around the behavior of the Guptas and perhaps some of the ANC officials.
Firstly, we are quite happy that the Commission has commenced its work. We are almost a second week, and we must continue to support the work of the Commission. Precisely the reason we'll continue, you'll see our presence here, because we have called for this Commission, and therefore we wouldn't like to run a parallel process to this Commission in terms of the public trial. We will not venture to analyze the character of witnesses about what they say. That is a function of the Commission. That's why we urge and make a call to all South Africans, both in the public sector and the private sector, including members of the ANC who have information that may help the work of this Commission, that they must do so. And I think it worries us that others may be worried, that there may be reprisals. There won't be any reprisals. It's important for the sake of this country, for the restoration of public interest to institutions of this country, the restoration of the rule of law, but also in terms of the restoration of ethical leadership, that we must come forward, whoever has gotten information must come forward to the Commission, including the media, who have played a very important role to bring expose about where we are, and therefore they must be ready themselves to make submissions.
Very quickly, you would have been part, I've just remembered this, you would have been part of the ANC communications machinery, because it is located within the secretariat of the ANC. Vytjie Mentor says back in 2010, he did go to Mantashe and Ms. Duarte to tell them about the offer of a ministerial post that would have been offered to her by the Gupta brothers. Do you have any recollection of that?
We are only second week of the 2 years of the Commission. You will hear a lot of names of the ANC members and leaders. It will be irresponsible of the ANC every time there's a name dropped, and therefore it must come and clarify itself. Let's allow the Commission to proceed. The Commission does provide for individuals who are mentioned to come and clarify if there's any infactual testimony that is provided by witnesses. We won't venture into discussions about the character of witnesses at this stage.
All right, Mr. Gupta, veering very clear of whether or not there would have been a meeting between Vytjie Mentor, Mantashe and Jesse Duarte. Of course, Mantashe, as we've already mentioned, he admits to that meeting having taken place. But importantly to us, I think, just touching on what Zizi said, the issue of people being urged to come forward and give testimony. That particular matter came up at the very beginning of Masego's testimony, where he said to the commission chairperson that he does believe that there are certain senior civil servants and middle managers who would have clear evidence of the kind of shenanigans that were taking place during that reign of terror when the Guptas were seemingly running the show in as far as government is concerned. And the commission chairperson actually saying and putting a task to his legal team, saying that those people must be approached because they have to come and give testimony, especially the directors general who would have co-signed the petition that Themba Maseko drafted and handed over to the minister, then Minister of Finance, Pravin Gordhan, and Public Service and Administration Minister Ngwako Ramatloti.
Mgambi, thank you so much, and thank you for trying there with Zizigodwa, who shuffled away from your question very nicely there towards the end. ENCA's Mgambi out in Parktown for us following that Commission of Inquiry into state capture.